What is up, everybody? Second show of the day, because when you're gone for a long time, you feel like you should probably just do two shows in one day to get over the fix. Here we are. It is Tuesday night. You know what it is, but there's so much to talk about. We've got Patrick Surtain possibly wanting out of Denver. Do the 49ers make sense? Can they make that move, and what would you give up for them? And then is it time to crown Brock Purdy? We're going to talk about those things plus more next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's Tuesday night, which means I got my guy, So Real, Sunil, in the building. What's up, Sunil?
You know, we were just talking off camera. You were saying It's not enough to just be good. You have to be really good on the border of great and beyond. So I'm going to say I'm doing excellent, my friend.
Okay, good. There we go. Much better, much better. Let's see how the chat's doing. And I better hear excellent, amazing. We already got people talking about today's topics. I love it. What's up, Kels Chronicles? Purdy's balls. That's interesting. Okay, I love it. I love it.
Pause. You gotta start off with the pause.
You and I were talking earlier, and it really does feel like it's a bye week almost. So much so that we're like, do we even do awards from last week? I feel like we got to. I feel like we can't do this show every Tuesday unless we do the awards. And I know that the game was 4 or 5 days ago, but we haven't talked about it. So let's get into awards early, and then we'll get into the rest of our topics. But to introduce the awards, here we go. All right. Okay.
Hey, the production value and the amount of money you put into production, bro.
I mean, that was a cool 10 G's for that video, I think. I mean, if it didn't cost me 10 G's, it should have. That's all I'm gonna say.
All of your guys' super chats go to this, so keep them coming if you want more of those.
It's like when you pay taxes, and few states do this. They're like repairing a road that you can't drive down for the next year, and they say something along the lines of, "This is where your hard-earned tax money is going." You're like, "Oh, thank you so much for letting me know." That little excerpt right there was 1 month of super chats. Thank you guys so much. I hope it was worth it.
Really, because of you, the fans. It's really because of you, the fans.
It's a give back to y'all. It really is. All right, let's talk about the awards from last week. So we always have 4 awards every week. We've got the Step It Up award for a player that definitely needs to step it up. We have the Jekyll and Hyde award, which is an award for a player that either played better than what we expect or worse than what we expected. And we've got the most underrated player of the week award, and then of course the MVP. So we're going to start with the Step It Up award. I'm going to go first this time because I always let you go first, I feel like. Step It Up award. Colton McKivitz. It's crazy because I've been on the line the whole time, and I've had Spencer Burford here for 2 weeks. We're going to get to him in a second. But Colton McKivitz is just not... I don't know if he can step it up. That's the thing. Right? Like, I want to see him step it up, but this is the 3rd week in a row that he just hasn't been very good at all. I mean, it is a clear downgrade from Mike McGlinchey. And I know a lot of people don't like Mike McGlinchey very much, and we're happy to get rid of him. And certainly for what he was getting paid, probably not worth the value, but he's way better than Colton McKivitz. And that, my friends, is not what you want to say about the new right tackle. So far through 3 weeks, very, very underwhelmed with Colton McKivitz.
I saw, and obviously it's PFF rankings, so take that for what you want. But I think that each week, Colton McKivitz has been ranked higher than Mike McGlinchey in their ratings. So I think that
let me say this. I haven't watched Mike McGlinchey this year, so I can't tell you what he is or what he isn't. I'm going off of Mike McGlinchey in this offense last year, right? compared to this year. Now, Mike McGlinchey may be awful this year. I've seen some highlights. Those are highlights. He got rock bottomed again week 1. So I'm not saying he's great, and he may not be playing great this year, but Mike McGlinchey last year to Colton McKivitz this year, clear downgrade.
Yeah. I mean, I still got faith in my guy, but he's still young. He's still learning. But yeah, I mean, on that offensive line, if there is a weak spot, it's the right side, right? And him and Burford combined. But my Step It Up award, it's kind of tough because I feel like in this game, all facets of it was a complete team win, I think.
For sure.
My Step It Up award last week was Hufanga. He ended up coming down with an interception this game. So we already know, these awards are turning into benefits for the team. So, once again, those super chats, I appreciate you keeping these segments going. But my Step It Up award, I'm going to go with the guy that, he's not playing bad and he has stepped it up before, but we're looking for consistency out of this position because we lost a fan favorite that was playing this last season in Jimmy Ward. I'm going to go back to Isaiah Oliver. He made some high impact plays a couple weeks ago that really gave us that feeling that, hey, maybe he could step up and be that guy, especially with the depleted secondary that we're having. There's not a lot of depth that we just trust behind, the top 3 starters. So I'm looking for Isaiah Oliver with, getting that chance. He was a high draft pick when he did get drafted into the league. He's always been a player that people said had a lot of talent, but never has really put it together and lived up to that talent. So I want to see consistency out of Isaiah Oliver. He's going to get an opportunity because Arizona has, 3, pretty good receivers, guys that are going to come out of the slot that we really need him to step it up. So Isaiah Oliver, you get my Step It Up award. And, we already know that means you're coming into a big game, my guy. So
he might just play extremely well this week. He said he technically give up no pressures. I don't know what his stat line was. I'm just telling you what I saw, and what I saw when I went back and watched it was very underwhelming. The other thing that we have to remember is that there is a run aspect side of this as well. There is a run blocking aspect, and they just effectively can't run to the right side for big chunks of games because of Colton McKivitz and Spencer Burford early in the season. We're going to talk about him in a second, or at least I am, which brings me, segue, to the Jekyll and Hyde award. Spencer Burford, for 2 weeks, I've said you need to be a step it up player. Spencer Burford stepped it up. This week, he played very well. There was a lot that came out this week that if you watch him play, he was very impressive. He always moved his feet well. He's always able to get to the next level. But often what I was seeing from him is he'd get to the next level and just completely whiff block or not get his hands on anybody. This week was very different. He was able to make blocks downfield. He was able to move his feet. You were able to run behind him a little bit. He did a very, very good job this week. I want to give a shout out to Spencer Burford. But it is Jekyll and Hyde because the first 2 weeks, not so great. This week, much better. We'll see about going forward. But Spencer Burford, also very young player, still a lot of time for him to grow. The hope was he would make those improvements this year. First 2 weeks, that hadn't happened. This week, we're starting to see some of that ascension from him that we expected. So shout out to you, Spencer Burford. You deserve my Jekyll and Hyde award this week.
Yeah, I love that. And, I'm going to go with a young player as well for my Jekyll and Hyde award. And he's going to get it because, playing time is going to be an issue for him just because he's, deeper on the depth chart. But our guy Ayuk went down. Ronnie Bell came in, stepped it up, took full advantage of his opportunity, got a tutty, threw some great blocks in the running game. Really, obviously, I think Ayuk was missed, especially in that first half. But Ronnie Bell did way better than I think any of these, depth kind of receivers have done in quite some time, outside of obviously Juwan Jennings. But definitely want to give my Jekyll Hyde award to Ronnie Bell. And interestingly enough, what I think Ronnie Bell is doing I wonder what's going to happen to Danny Gray on the depth chart when he does get healthy. I wonder if Danny Gray is going to turn into another guy that doesn't get a shot because he just can't crack the rotation. So it's going to be interesting that Ronnie Bell, is doing kind of what Jawan Jennings had done to some of the receivers that were drafted higher than him, where they make them, guys that probably won't be on the roster throughout their whole contract.
Yeah, and I think you make an interesting point about Danny Gray, because Danny Gray, when he was drafted, it was like, okay, we got something different. We got somebody that's going to take the top off. This is something the 49ers don't have. When Ronnie Bell was drafted, it was like, that dude's a 49er. In fact, that was the first thing I tweeted when he got drafted. I'm like, that's a 49er. You can see it all over him. He's a great blocker. He's a decent route runner, but he's super tough. He can catch in traffic. He's a yak guy. He is an absolute 49er through and through. You saw that right away. Danny Gray, not so much, but we thought, okay, well, it's something different than what everybody else brings to the table. This will be good. I don't know that that's necessarily what Shanahan wants. I know that he thinks he wants that stuff sometimes, but Danny Gray can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. Ronnie Bell has already proven that he's valuable to this team more so than anything that Danny Gray's done, unfortunately. Right. And much lesser time. So, yeah, I think Danny Gray certainly is ripping any sort of roster spot. Not necessarily a roster spot, but the depth chart, he's ripping his spot completely away from him. There's no doubt about that. Yeah,
for sure. And, I mean, I think Danny Gray was also when Trey Lance was the future, right? We thought that was going to – they partnered together much better than I think a Brock Purdy does with Danny Gray. I think – Ronnie Bell kind of matches with the Brock Purdy style offense and is a better fit for this team.
Very, very good point. All right. Who's your most underrated player of the week?
This one was tough again. Like this game, I think the awards were the hardest for me to just because I believe that, I think there was a few players that obviously I think showed out, but overall, I think everybody kind of just did their job. But I want to go with Javon Hargrave. And I know that it's kind of weird because it's like, well, he was our splash off-season signing. And, he obviously has gotten, multiple sacks this season. But this defensive line isn't maybe as productive when it comes to sacks as previous defensive lines, but the amount of chaos that they're creating, I was seeing stats about the amount of pressures, and the amount of wins that this defensive line is getting. Yeah. It's the highest that I think we've ever seen since Shanahan's been here, right? And I think the way that Hargrave has seamlessly just fit into this defensive line. I was watching. We're going to, I think, we'll get into it more when we talk about Shanahan, but I was watching on the 49ers put out kind of a mic'd up kind of session, and Javon Hargrave was talking about how he's kind of shocked at how close he's gotten with this team because that's not normal for him. He's like, I don't usually talk to guys as much as, I talk to you. And it shows, man. These guys are having fun together. They're already doing his celebration. He's being productive. And, I don't know if this defensive line will have the amount of sacks that they've had previously, but the disruption that they're having, the effectiveness that they're having, and I think he's a player that's elevating the guys around him, much like Bosa has done in the past as well. And I don't think he's getting enough credit for how seamless of a fit he's done and how productive he's been, along this defensive line.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that he's rated higher as a player. You expect a lot from him. So to say underrated, but his name certainly would be mentioned a lot more if he was getting those sacks, but it's not all about sacks. And we've seen that. Bosa has been a topic of conversation because until this week, he didn't have any sacks. And even his sack this week was a cheap one. I mean, let's just call it what it is. But he's been very productive regardless. And Eric Armstead, the first week, he put up technically 0 stats, but he was dominant in that game. And so I think we just have to watch what's actually happening before we say, hey, this player's good or not good. And, the stats say this, and just watch the games. That'll tell you what's actually going on. And if you're not sure, go back and watch it, focus in on a player. It's really fun to do, actually. Just watch them snap in and snap out and see what they're doing to help with a team and how productive they are. And Javon Hargrave has been very productive. I saw that clip that you're talking about as well. Really, really cool to see. My underrated player this week is third down and Juwan. I mean, this man had 2 grabs this week. He had one early in the game that was very, very underrated and almost identical to one he had last week. This week was on a slant. Last week it was kind of on a deep dig where the ball was placed behind him. He's running full speed. And unless you slow it down, he's perfected this. He's done it 2 weeks in a row where the ball's behind him. He literally catches it and then spins and keeps his full momentum and takes off downfield. But it happens so quickly, so effortlessly that you don't even necessarily catch it till you go back and see it. You think, oh, it's a perfect throw out in front of him. No, it's behind him. He's spinning and making the catch and then just keeps moving like nothing. Did it last week, did it this week. And then the one down the left sideline where Purdy gave him the 50-50 ball. I mean, the guy's just a beast. We know how good of a blocker he is. Debo had a few big plays this week, as did Christian McCaffrey. Juwan Jennings is a big part of those. He's just a really, really good, sound football player. In the way that the 49er players talk about him, you would think he's the best player on the team. I heard Fred Warner, this was last season, 2 off seasons ago. He was talking about Juwan Jennings with Richard Sherman, and he's like, that's one of the best overall football players on this team. Not wide receivers, football players on this team. They recognize what he does. And Armstead made mention of that after, I believe, week 1 as well, talked about how good Juwan Jennings really is and how much he doesn't get recognized. These players certainly recognize what he does. And I think it's only right that for the most underrated player that we bring him up as well, because he is a hell of a football player. Again, stats may say one thing, you're not going to have big numbers, but these little things that guys like Juwan Jennings do, that's why you win football games. It's not just about the guys that make the catches and run for touchdowns. It's all about who helped make it happen, and Juwan Jennings is consistently a part of that.
The blocking from the wide receiver position became a thing when Juwan Jennings was became a 49er. Like, it always was important, but I think he was the first player under Shanahan that really embodied what he wants as far as a receiver and blocking. So yeah, and it's going to be interesting, Jesse, because I know we've talked about this in previous shows. You don't think Jennings is going to be here past this season, right? So It's going to be interesting because he does have like a prominent role, but I wonder if he wants more opportunity to be able to like be more featured, I guess, as a receiver. And there's a lot of teams that we know, 3-4 teams right now that know exactly what kind of player he is, and I could see him, any one of those teams, wanting to scoop him up because he's perfect for the culture. He's exactly what you want as far as a receiver that could block when you're a run first team. So I think that's a great pick, and we need to appreciate him because he might not be here past this season.
Yeah, and I don't think he will be here, but just like they did with Kendrick Bourne to Juwan Jennings, they've got the exit plan, and the exit plan is one Ronnie Bell. I mean, he is a very similar player. He's got good hands, good blocker, good route runner. You can rely on him. Not the fastest guy, but he definitely can break things and make things shake once he catches the ball. I mean, that's the exit strategy. It only makes sense. So I would be shocked if Juwan Jennings is back. I love him as a player, but I like Kendrick Bourne a lot too. And when he moved on, I was disappointed. Now we see that, listen, we've got a pretty damn good player in Juwan, and I think the same thing is going to be said about Ronnie Bell. But right now, Juwan Jennings definitely deserves to be appreciated. Who is your MVP this week? I think there's multiple good candidates. There really is.
I'm gonna go with the one that I think really stood out. Obviously, Ayuk going down. This guy picked up the slack and some, and that's going to be Debo. I think Debo had an amazing game. just the attitude he brought from the jump when Brock Purdy was a little bit shaky in the beginning, being able to, break some tackles, get some yards, show that physicality. Obviously, he, got a touchdown and really showed, the yak and things like that. And look, these games from Debo are great, but I don't know if we're going to see many of them if Ayuk's healthy, right? Because it seems like Ayuk is featured when he is there and healthy, but it's great to know that, even when you don't have a weapon like Ayuk on the field, Debo could be in there and basically be the receiving options there. So I think he had a great game. I think, the attitude he brought changed the dynamic of this offense. And look, they're putting up 30 points regardless who's on the field, because the next man up, people are just stepping up. So to me, Debo is the MVP.
Yeah, and I gave it to Debo last week. I gave it to CMC week 1. Debo, and I think I could give it to either one this week. Let me say that. I'm not going to give it to either one. One thing about Debo, though, I love what Debo brings. I love that on that third down. I mean, he really kind of flipped the game around, much like Chicago, not to the same effect necessarily, but similar, where it's third down and long. They just hit him on a screen, and he makes things shake. The one thing that's a little disappointing still about Debo to me is that if you watch him play in and play out, I think he takes plays off when the ball's not coming to him. It showed up a lot last year. Greg Pinelli did a great job on Eric Crocker's channel breaking that down last year, and you could see it all over the place. You're still seeing some of those things. It was called out on the play that Purdy got hurt against Philadelphia. You're seeing it again this year. I thought maybe, okay, well, he was out of shape. He's got to kind of pace himself. He's in phenomenal shape. There's no reason to take some of these plays off. They go do the orbit motions and all these things, and he's just kind of lackadaisical through some of these plays. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that you never have to worry about the effort side. Juwan Jennings is a guy that you never have to worry about the effort side. Now, Debo may be the most talented overall player out of all those guys, but he does have an effort thing that now is going on. And who knows, this could have been 2 years ago as well. I'm not sure, but I know for sure last year and early this year, I'm seeing it again, and that's a little disappointing for me. Hopefully he's able to turn that around, or especially as they're making late playoff pushes into the playoffs, he's got to be dialed in, play in and play out. That's just my opinion. So for me, I'm not going to give it to him this week. This player that I'm going to give it to had a rough start to the game. First drive, it did not look good at all. But the reason I'm going to give it to this player is because they completely turned it around. They turned what could have been a very bad game and a disaster game against a team that had no business being in the game, and then turned it on when they needed it most, and that's Brock Purdy. I got to give him the MVP this week because of the mental fortitude more than anything. He did make a couple good throws that I really liked this week. He had one to Kittle, he had one to Bell, and then, of course, the Debo one that everybody loves. But to me, it's less about what he did for the whole game and more about overcoming a tough start to that game, because it was a very, very rough start, and he completely turned it around, stuck through it, played very well when they needed it most. So Brock Purdy, my MVP this week, goes to you.
I like that. And look, one of the criticisms, and we're going to get into it, I'm sure, when we talk about Purdy later on the show, but is that we don't know what Purdy is, when it comes to adversity, right? Hasn't played that many plays when the team is down. He hasn't had to have too many like game-winning, drives and all that kind of stuff. But it was historic what he went up against as far as the blitz rate that the Giants did on him. And the fact that the Giants only got 2 sacks, a lot of that is because of Purdy and his ability to get the ball out of his hand quick. And I think that is something that we didn't see from him necessarily last season. And when we're looking at a quarter, I think a lot of times people forget because of the whole kind of drama surrounding the quarterback position and, Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy, all that kind of stuff. This is Brock Purdy's second year. There's still room for him to develop. There's still things that we haven't seen from him. And each game we're trying to see if there's something new. And that release time. You know, that's something that Jimmy G was elite at. We know Tom Brady in the past has been elite at. Like, I'm not saying Brock Purdy is Tom Brady, but what I am saying is it's another wrinkle to his game that we're seeing he's capable of doing, because that isn't easy. Like, we've seen other quarterbacks just not be able to handle the blitz the way that Brock Purdy was able to against the Giants. There's so many throws, Jesse, where he's looking straight, knowing he's about to get hit, and he's throwing the ball where it needs to be thrown, not hesitating, not being scared. It shows a lot about how he feels as a quarterback. He's not scared to take a hit, right? Even though he had season-ending injury at the end of, or I mean, I don't know if you consider season, but he had surgery after. Obviously, it ended the season, but that was a one-and-done game. But we've seen, like, when Jimmy got injured, season-ending injury, when he came back, he was afraid to get hit. You know what I mean? It took some ramp-up time. This game, Brock Purdy wasn't pulling any punches. He was stepping into the throws. He was getting the ball out quick, taking the hit, all that kind of stuff. So to me, yeah, absolutely, he definitely deserves an MVP award.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you talk about the unknowns with Purdy, and I don't think anybody I mean, anybody that saw it right away in the Dolphins game should have known then, but this is something that I talked about him coming out of college was I've never been worried about the mental side of things. I don't think he's ever going to fold mentally. I just know who he is by watching him a ton in college, knowing what he went through in that situation. Then you see it immediately in the NFL. The mental aspect of it, or crumbling under pressure, you're never going to get that from him. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to be amazing in all those situations all the time, but he's not going to crumble because of the mental side. It's just not going to happen. And that in itself is something that you should be happy about. And you're right. I mean, we saw the blitzes. Again, it didn't start out great, but dude, it ended very, very good. And it's funny because that stat was, or that number was broken this week by Brock Purdy with the most amount of blitzes. And then Justin Herbert almost rebroke it on Sunday. He was about 1% behind him. He had a phenomenal game as well, by the way. Absolutely incredible game himself. But, you know, that's just it. Is Brock Purdy, to me, like I said, sure, you could give it to Debo. You could give it to CMC. Totally understand why you would do that. But to come back from that first drive and a half-ish to finish the way he did, dude, you just gotta give him some love for that. So, all right, Kless says, the positive fellas, what up? Any word on Danny Gray's health? We were just talking about him. Seems like his speed could actually catch up to Brock's deep throws. Word, that's a good point. Brock does seem to throw line drive deep throws. Maybe he could catch up to those. I don't know. I don't know what the future is for Danny Gray. We did talk pretty extensively about it, and I know that, Kless, you dropped this a while ago. I think even before we talked about the Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray situation, I think we probably answered the question, but no, I don't know what's going on with his health personally.
Yeah, short answer, even if he's healthy, I don't think he's seeing the field anytime soon.
Yeah, if he does, it's very little, right? Yeah, I agree. Cryptic says, we have seen in back-to-back weeks Purdy bobble some snaps under center. Is that something to worry about, or just reps between them both? I know I remember the one this week, and I'm pretty sure I remember the one the week prior. If I remember them correctly, I think they were both on Brendel. It was Brendel snapping before Purdy was expecting it on both those scenarios. Now, I don't know what the snap count was, so maybe Purdy should have expected those, and Brendel was right. But usually, I tend to think that the quarterback's going to be right on the snap count and not necessarily the center. So, from the naked eye, I put both those on Brendel. Certainly could be something to worry about. I mean, if those could have easily been turnovers, and Brendel is, if he plays in loud environments as the season goes on, you definitely don't want throwaway plays in big games because your snap count is off. So I don't think it's anything to be like super concerned about, but if we continue to see it week in and week out, yeah, then it certainly becomes a little bit of a concern for sure.
As long as there's not another perspiration gate.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Butts get sweaty is what we've heard. All right. So I made a video yesterday talking about this. I talked about it with Ryan, but I'm gonna ask you as well, just to maybe you can ground me. Sunil, you're the one that usually does ground me in these scenarios, but it just seems like right. It just seems like a magical season is kind of shaping up very, very early on. I understand that it's way too early to talk Super Bowl. I get that.
Yeah.
But going into the season, we knew what it was. We knew that the 49ers were one of maybe eight teams that realistically had a chance to win a Super Bowl. After 3 weeks, we can confidently say, yes, they are still one of those teams, and the season is shaping out kind of like what we thought going into the season. Not only that, we've had some key players on other teams get injured. Of course, you never want to talk about injuries. You never wish injuries or anything, but winning a Super Bowl a lot is about the luck and can you stay healthy? And we've seen the 49ers have their fair share of injuries throughout the years and able to overcome them and still make deep runs. We'll see what happens to some of these other teams, but it just seems like everything early on is really starting to shape up for the 49ers. It has that feeling to me that it could be a special season. Do you believe that, I'm off my rocker for talking about it too early, and just as it sits 3 weeks in, I know it's a quick snapshot. Do you believe right now they should be the favorites to win the Super Bowl?
So, do I believe you're off your rocker? Yes, but not necessarily because we're talking about
perfect.
Super Bowl this year, because all the other stuff about you. Look, of the two of us, I'm the only one that has the 49ers winning the Super Bowl this year in their early predictions, right? I thought I had the 49ers in the Super Bowl winning against the Chiefs. And I got to say, I'm even more excited about that pick now more than ever because, look, obviously health plays a big role in it, and knock on wood that everybody can stay healthy and the team is healthy going into the playoffs and those games, which is a big if, right? It is tough to stay healthy for a full season. But you look at this team and how they're playing. In previous years, Jesse, we were dependent on the defense solely to be able to win games. That's not this year, right? This year, this offense could put up points regardless of how the defense is playing, right? In the win streak from last season, a lot of what people, maybe some of the criticism against Purdy or why people weren't totally bought in on Purdy was because the defense was so good giving Purdy short fields, right? So it was like, is it really Purdy or is it just this defense is turning the ball over and giving short fields? Well, now Purdy's winning games without necessarily the benefit of these short fields. He's driving the ball, and getting points on a lot of these drives as well. So it's just the way that they're winning now is more of a complete football team. And I think that's the reason why, Jesse, 49ers have always been a contender, right? But they've had these, we haven't seen them play a complete game, or, the offense can't put up enough points. And it's a lopsided type win with the defense has to hold the team under a certain amount of points for this team to be competitive. That's not the case now. I could see us winning, going up against a team and having to score 40 points to win a game, and this team being fine with that, right? I could also see this team winning in a very low-scoring game because the defenses are playing awesome, and the defense needs to make, turnovers to be able to win a game. I could also see us needing to kick 3-4 50+ yard field goals, and we have the kicker to be able to do that, right? There's so many ways that this team could win right now, which is why I'm very excited about this team. And I agree with you. This team is something special, and as long as they stay healthy, there's not a team that I think is going to be significantly better than them or significantly favored over this team. But health is going to play a big role in that.
Yeah, most certainly it will. We talked a lot this offseason about this offense. And I remember going into the playoffs, I was saying, this was last year going into the playoffs, I had said, to me, it feels like this team is starting to be offensive driven more than ever. I think the upgrade from Jimmy to Purdy helps with that. obviously we know what CMC brings to the table. And then we talked about it again this offseason, and I reiterated that point. I think that as good as this defense is, this might be more of an offensive-driven team. And I think that's starting to show a little bit. Here's some examples of that. Week 2, Purdy does not play great by any means. Arguably his worst game, still wasn't horrible, but he wasn't what we've kind of grown used to throughout this short part of his career. They still put up 30 points. And Ayuk was laboring. Okay. This week, Ayuk is out. Started out rocky again. They still put up 30 points. When you look at the 49ers, they're ranked, I believe, 20th right now in red zone touchdown percentage, which means they're not even converting their red zone drives into touchdowns. They're still scoring 30 points a game. And they're ranked 11th in the NFL in third down percentage. So they're not great in third downs. They're good, top half of the league, but they're not great in third downs. They're not great in red zone touchdown percentage. Brock Purdy's had some ups and downs. Ayuk's missed a game. He was hurt in another game, and they still put up 30 every single freaking week. This offense hasn't even hit its stride yet at all. They could be putting up 40 plus a week. I mean, every week we've looked at them and be like, well, they left a couple touchdowns on the board there. Oh, okay. So you're saying instead of 30, they could have just put up 44 every week? Like that's what we're talking about. This team right now is so damn good, and it hasn't even hit its stride yet, in my opinion, offensively. Now, I understand when you play some better defenses, things are going to tighten up. It's never going to be perfect. I get all those things. I do think some of those red zone numbers and third down percentage numbers can certainly improve. And if they do, on top of everything else, and the health stays where it's at, this team can score a lot of points.
Yeah. And like I said, whenever you're looking for what teams can win and be a Super Bowl caliber team, they have to be able to win in a multitude of ways, right? And the 49ers have that. They could win because the special teams plays well. They could win because the defense plays well. They could win because the offense plays well. And that's the type of team that you want to have if you're contending for a Super Bowl. So right now, I mean, all of the power rankings have 49ers up top, no matter who's ranking the power rankings. So the league are, most people, I think, have the 49ers as the favorite through 3 weeks, but there's a lot of seasons still to be played. Obviously, there still needs to be a lot of luck that goes along with that when it comes to health. But at least what we want to see from the team, we're starting to see that, and we're putting ourselves in a good position to be able to, get that bye because I think that's ultimately going to end up, being who comes out of the NFC.
I agree with that. And the bye week is going to be extremely important. The 49ers are one of 3 teams that are 3-0. And that's the big thing. You talked about it, how going into this last week that the 49ers, this is the 3rd time in the Shanahan era where they've started out 2-0 or better. The other 2 times, one, they went to the Super Bowl. The other, they went to the NFC Championship. Well, this is only the 2nd time they've started out 3-0 in the Shanahan era. And the other time that happened, they did go to the Super Bowl. The 49ers traditionally start out slow. They have not done that. Mm-hmm. They have not hit their stride by any means, but they're still winning these games, and they're winning very impressively. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, great example. They also have not hit their stride. They're going to be a better team, I believe, as this season runs along. But they're winning. So you take wins how you can get them, but they're kind of laboring along in some of these wins. The 49ers aren't laboring along. Right. I mean, you can say, okay, for a half they were stuck with, or 2.5 quarters, but by the time the game's over, I mean, they're winning pretty clearly and handily. So those are all good things for a team early on in the season that should get better as the season goes. Niner gang, I wanted to address this. You said, what the F ads? So YouTube is a lot of fun right now. They are pushing by November that, so as it sits now, when you put ads on a video, you can choose like where those ads happen, how often they happen. Are they skippable? Are they non-skippable? I've always chosen skippable ads. And the other thing I've always chosen is during a live stream, no ads. And then after the live stream's over, you'll get ads if you go back and watch it, and they're always skippable. However, Google in November is taking all that away from everybody. meaning you either choose to put ads on or you don't. They'll choose if they're skippable. They'll choose if they're not skippable. As a part of that, during the early ramp-up period, they have taken away the autonomy when it comes to live streams. So I either have to choose ads or not choose ads. And I'm very, very bad about going in after the fact and changing it. So at this point, I have to choose ads. The good news is I'm choosing skippable, and I can choose when to place them. So anywhere from 6-minute intervals up to 30-minute intervals, and I'm choosing 30-minute intervals. So it sucks, but it is what it is, and there's nothing that I can do about it. So,
but look, the production value that you're getting because of those ads.
Yeah, well, did you not see the award? Did you not? And I know that you're not calling it out or like complaining or nothing, but I do want to address it because you're not the only one seeing them. You're also not guaranteed to see ads either. And if you have YouTube Premium, obviously you're not going to see them. But I do want to address it because I think it's worth talking about. Brock Purdy's balls, what's up down there? Said just connected the dots. Purdy took Jesse's Ducks in the 2020 Fiesta Bowl. Yeah, well, actually, there's a text that I've put out there quite often, actually, from December of 2020, leading up to that Fiesta Bowl, where I text my friend who's also from Oregon, knowing that we were going to play Iowa State and Brock Purdy. And I said, hey, during this game, keep an eye out on Brock Purdy. I think he can be something in this league. I believe he's a second or third round talent is what I said roughly in that text. And, here we are a couple years later, he's a 49er and doing something in this league. But yeah, he beat the Ducks. Not a big fan of that for sure. Cryptic says early, but I want to see premier matchups with Dallas, Philly, and Baltimore. I agree wholeheartedly with this. Definitely looking forward to those games. Those are going to be 3 fun games. Philly, super interesting. But I brought this up earlier, Sunil. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I don't know how much of Philly you've watched, but it seems like they've got a bit of an advantage because when other teams get the ball, it's 1st and 10. Philly, it's 1st and 8, essentially, because they've got the scrum that they can do on short yardage plays where they're guaranteed to get first downs.
Right.
It's absolutely incredible. It's unique to them because they have an elite offensive line and they have a quarterback who's got a lower center of gravity. And he's a power lifter. Like that's the one team that can execute that rugby scrum looking play to the level that they do. And it's damn near impossible to stop. So really for them, they have 2 plays to get 8 yards. And then after that, they're going to go for it on 3rd and 4th down. And if they only need 2, they're guaranteed pretty much to get it over the next 2 downs. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it.
Yeah, and I mean, with Swift back there, they're starting to get a more reliable running game that they've had, and they're last year they were pretty good at airing it out as well, and they haven't quite got that figured out yet. So I
hasn't even started running yet either, really.
Yeah, so I mean, I have Eagles as the top competition
for sure.
I always think that the 49ers and the Eagles are going to have a great rivalry here for the next 5-10 years with Dallas sprinkled in every now and then, but yeah, those are the 3 teams that I feel like are being built the right way and that are always going to be in contention. And yeah, it's not a shock to me that the 2 undefeated teams in the NFC right now are the 49ers and the Eagles.
Yeah, most certainly. I'm looking forward to that matchup. I do think this year's NFC Championship between the 49ers and the Eagles is going to be played at Levi, however. So we'll see how it goes, but that would be my expectation as we head into this thing. All right. This has been brought up to me quite a bit today, and I didn't expect it to necessarily be a topic. I didn't have it a topic on the early show, but a lot of people brought it up in the chat. And people are asking, is Patrick Surtain, is that a possibility that they can go bring him in? Now, let's talk about the situation and why people are bringing this up. So his dad, who was a very good corner in his own right, I remember watching him as a kid for the Miami Dolphins, came out and threw some things out on social media. Like, basically, my son deserves better than this. Like, what's going on in Denver? Essentially saying, like, get him out of here. Now, I don't know if that's his son's feelings or if that's just his as a parent and the emotion. I don't know. But it does seem like there's a possibility, at least on There's Surtain side of things where he may want out. Now, that doesn't mean he gets traded, and it certainly doesn't mean he gets traded to the 49ers, but I think realistically to get a Patrick Surtain, if they were willing to shop him, you're going to need bare minimum a first-round pick, and you're going to need probably a second-round pick, or at the very least a third-round pick, maybe one of those compensatory picks or a future pick, what have you. You're not going to get this guy for a third-round pick. He's only 23 years old. He's a top 5 corner in the league. He was a first-round pick. You're not going to just poach him for nothing. It's going to take a lot to get him. The question is, how realistic do you think it is? And if the opportunity does become available and he does hit the trade block, do you think the 49ers should go all in for him? What do you think?
So obviously a talent like Surtain on your team is definitely going to make your team better. But the real question is, does it make sense for what you have to give up? Does this move get you closer to a Super Bowl? And how much does it affect the future of your team? Like, we haven't had a first round pick in quite some time. And I'm not very high on the 49ers' ability to necessarily draft in the first round. They're kind of hit or miss when it comes to that. But I do know that when it comes to finding a tackle, that you're going to have a higher chance finding that in the first round than any other round in the draft. And with Cole McKivitz, you're saying, obviously people are saying that's the weak link, as well as, Trent Williams getting up there in age. The need for a tackle is more than ever needed at this point. And it's not like we've had a chance to solve that problem because we haven't had a first round pick the last few years. So I don't think that bringing over Surtain necessarily elevates us to a higher level than we already are right now, right? I know that the cornerback room does lack depth. Bringing in a guy like Surtain alongside Moody, you're talking about lights out, probably the best cornerback duo in the league. But at the cost of what it's going to be, you're going to have to pay this guy, all that kind of stuff. To me, I just think that if they don't win right now, Jesse, I think it causes more problems than it solves. Let's just put it that way.
Knees has 2 comments already that are vying for comment of the show. First one says, with the ads being played, he expects a new graphic and a new segment next week, and you'll get a new fullback and be happy about it. Great comments from you, Knees. Very good job. Everybody else, step your damn game up. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I don't think it's very realistic. From Denver's standpoint, I don't know why you would trade a 23-year-old lockdown corner at all, unless you're getting multiple first-round picks. Somebody would have to really just blow you away with an offer. So I don't foresee them shopping him necessarily. If they do, yes, the 49ers should definitely be interested. And yes, I would happily give up what I said. If it's a first, let's say it's a first and a compensatory third. Yep, doing that in a heartbeat. Patrick Surtain on this team right now, it is by far the best team in the NFL. Right tackle, definitely an area of opportunity for sure. That being said, the defensive line, you now move Demo inside. Tarvarius Ward is on number 2 receivers for the most part, and Patrick Surtain's a true lockdown corner in this league. I just don't know how anybody beats that team. I mean, that move right there is we are here to win it all this year and figure it out from there. Now, I will say this as well. Yes, it makes things interesting going forward for sure, because that first round pick, you and I both agree, should be used on a tackle next year, right? Mm-hmm. We agree there. No doubt about that. Yes, it's going to be hard to pay Patrick Surtain going forward, and Brandon Ayuk. Agree there. However, if it means you're going to win a Super Bowl, and I believe that a talent like that coming onto this team right now, they're by far and away the best team in the NFL. I don't think it's even close. I certainly go make that move if it becomes available to them.
So to take that logic and go backwards and build it. So you think that the reason that the 49ers may lose in a Super Bowl or may not win a Super Bowl is because their secondary is not strong enough?
Well, I mean, I don't know
because that's what you're kind of saying. Because ultimately, this piece, if it makes them that much better, is because the secondary isn't strong enough to win a Super Bowl.
Not necessarily. I think both things can be true. I see what you're trying to do here.
I mean, I'm being logical. Like that's what
I'm not a fan of it.
Look,
but I see what you're trying to do. And it's
I'm trying to ground you. Like I'm trying to ground you. Go ahead.
A for effort. Two problems with that. One, there is not a lot of depth behind our starting corners. So if one does go down, that's an issue. Also, we have seen in the playoffs that defenses don't necessarily get the benefit of the whistle, especially in the trenches. We've seen that happen to the 49ers. So you're going to need some people that might have to cover for a little bit longer than what they're used to. It's not that Demo's bad. It's certainly not that Travarius Ward's bad. And Oliver's playing fine. But the difference between a Demo and an Oliver at nickel, I think, is pretty significant. And it's even more significant, the difference between Demo and Surtain. And now, if Travarius Ward has to go up against number twos, I'll take that matchup all day long. That right there, I mean, you basically are saying we have one weakness on this team. It's the right tackle or the right side of the offensive line. I know we can't necessarily address that this year. Usually during the trade deadline, that's not something you can address. But we are going 100% all in. And another reason why I think it's actually possible that you could keep a Patrick Surtain and IU going forward. I know it sounds crazy, but if you win a Super Bowl, there's a good chance that Trent Williams retires. And if he doesn't retire this year, then he likely retires after next year. That's a lot of money that's going to come off the books. Eric Armstead and Kittle, I wouldn't expect them to be here past next year. And the only reason I expect them to be here next year is because they kick the can down the road again to free up all this money. But the money is going to start to become available because those guys are going to come off the books. I just think if you can go get a 23-year-old talent who's already a top 5 at worst in the league at his position and is only going to get better, I mean, it's hard to pass on that. It's hard to pass on that is all I'm going to say.
You just gave me 3 reasons why we need to have a first-round pick. Because if Trent Williams is gone, Kittle is gone, and Eric Armstead is gone, this team is going to be trash for some time if you can't replenish those coffers as quick as you can. To me, look, I think that obviously you want Surtain if you could get him, right? To me, though, does Surtain necessarily guarantee this team is a Super Bowl winner more than what they are right now? I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so is I haven't seen a cornerback really be the difference in any team, right? A D lineman, I've seen that be an issue. I've seen that, change the course of things, but when it comes to corners, I don't think necessarily a corner does it per se, right? Because you could be the best lockdown corner, but you're still getting burnt. You know what I mean? People are saying, oh, we're going to need him against Tyreek Hill and stuff like that. I agree. But Surtain was on the defense that just got 70 put up on them. So it's not like Surtain made that big of a difference against, Tyreek in Miami, in the Miami game. They just put up 70 on him, a historic number with Surtain in the backfield.
Yeah, but they don't have near the talent around. You know what I mean? Like,
sure,
of course,
but what I'm saying,
if you add Surtain to a boo-boo defense, of course he's not going to make the difference. But you're already adding him to, at worst, the 49ers are a top 3 defense. You add Surtain, I mean, they're clearly the best defense in the league.
Sure, but is that difference that important? Right? Is that difference that important? I don't know. Like, I understand the whole go all in, right? It's the Rams mentality. That's what they got their Super Bowl out of it, going all in. F them draft picks and just going and getting all the high level talent. There's something to be said for that. To me, I think the 49ers right now are building a dynasty. they have a roster that's good enough to win right now, and not just like squeak in, like actually dominate in. But you get a Surtain, that means that maybe you're not as good along the offensive line next season, a couple of years. It's just the trade-off, right? And so some people are like, win the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter. That'll buy me 2-3 years of the team not being as good, stuff like that. So, and people saying, all of those names that they just mentioned, none of those guys got traded and immediately a Super Bowl happened. You know what I mean? Like, those guys got traded and it took years before the Rams won with Jalen Ramsey. Stephon Gilmore got traded. I don't think he's won a Super Bowl with any of those teams. It doesn't happen just they come in and all of a sudden they win a Super Bowl. Even last year, right? They made the trade for James Bradbury, took him to the Super Bowl, but that didn't end up, they didn't win the Super Bowl. The Eagles did either. So I don't know. I just haven't seen a cornerback get traded and all of a sudden that guaranteed a Super Bowl for a team. So
what would you say if Patrick Surtain went on to one of the 6 or so teams that are truly competing for a Super Bowl that are not the 49ers? Would you be like, damn,
I mean, they
just
better.
Got a lot better.
Yeah, they'd be better, but does that mean I don't think the 49ers are just as talented, or now all of a sudden they're that much better than the 49ers? I would say no.
Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
This team has gone away from playing as much man. We're not playing as much man as we're playing from last season. You know what I mean? They're playing more zone, and like they're playing the five man fronts, and kind of zoning in the secondary and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Like, look, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, look, if Patrick Surtain comes, I'm not gonna be excited about it. What I am saying though is it that necessary? Because we also need a tackle more than anything, you know what I mean? To be good. So like, are we willing to give up that tackle, quote unquote, for Surtain? That's basically what you're looking for. And the Dion,
I'll go draft 7 tackles next year if that's what it takes. See if I hit on one. I don't care. We got 7 picks. They're all freaking tackles. Okay. Right. They're all tackles.
With the first pick, tackle out of Oklahoma. Exactly. With the second pick, tackle out of Texas. With the third pick.
Yeah, exactly.
Soul certified. Dion won with us immediately. That's true, but that also was not a salary cap. So you could just bring in any kind of talent, and that there was no salary cap there. The salary cap, I think, was instated after the next season. So. Well,
that was actually the first year of the salary cap, but there was a lot of holes in the salary cap. So
yeah,
I'll give you that. I guess the one thing that is similar though is that the 49ers and the Cowboys went back to back where Dion went both those years. And those were 2 defenses that were already like very, very good defenses. And then they added an elite corner to it. That's what I'm saying would happen with the 49ers. You're already at maybe the best defense in the league. You get him, you're for sure the best defense in the league. Hands down. So we just talked about how the offense is great too. Like, I don't know. To me, that's for sure. For sure, you're the best team in the league.
I think for sure they are right now anyways.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, if they don't win a Super Bowl, Patrick Surtain ends up on, I don't know, Buffalo or something, then we'll circle back to this one.
Sure. I will bet you right now.
I'm totally forgetting about this in 3 months, so don't worry.
Yeah, I'll bet you right now Patrick Surtain doesn't win a Super Bowl this year. Let's just put it out there right now.
He's gonna stay on Denver. It's what's gonna happen. So it's not gonna matter. All right, you wanted to put this topic in here, so I'm going to ask you these next 2 topics, and I'm going to ask you kind of where your mind is going on these 2. So you asked if this is a new Kyle Shanahan. Why don't you go ahead and lay this topic out for me?
So yeah, look, everybody knows I'm a Shanahan, probably back to Shanahan at this point because I just love the guy. he just
basically
got
what Neil's saying is if he can get Shanahan into the show, he's going to mix it in. So go ahead.
Absolutely. But obviously coming off I'm sure we didn't talk about it yet, but he just got extended. Him and Lynch just got extended. So we're going to have Shanahan here for quite some time. And I know the discussions with you specifically, Jesse, is you've had some criticisms of Shanahan when it comes to play calling, when it comes to his leadership ability. I know Ryan, who's our boy as well, has talked about his emotional intelligence, right? There's a lot surrounding Kyle Shanahan as far as criticisms. Now, I've seen things that I've always debated as far as maybe those criticisms are a little harsh, but it doesn't matter. Everybody knows when I talk, it's coming from a place of I'm behind Kyle Shanahan. I don't think you've ever been against Kyle Shanahan, but you've had these criticisms, and I think that you've seen some changes, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe talk about some of these things that you've seen, whether it be play calling, whether it be the way that he's handling players or, media, whatever you think the changes are. Because I think if I'm answering this question, not necessarily new Kyle Shanahan, but I think the evolution that people have wanted to see, we're starting to see.
I completely do agree with this. And my biggest criticisms of Shanahan have always been in the leadership department. I'm not, people get mad. Oh, so you know more than Kyle Shanahan or you'd build a better team. Chill out, okay? Like, just take a chill pill. Nobody's saying that. But one thing that I do believe I am an expert in, and I'm not coaching football teams. I'm not running football teams. That is not my expertise. But in life, one thing that I feel like I've really come to master is leadership. And when I see other leaders, I can pick out the flaws in them. And not because I've always been a great leader myself. I've been a horrible leader in my life. And I've learned how to become a good leader in my life through those trials, through those tribulations, making mistakes, overcoming them, trying it again, trying it a different way, and just managing 30, 40, 50 personalities at a time myself and having to get through that from different age ranges to different experience ranges to different backgrounds, everything. And so I've learned a lot through that. And watching Kyle Shanahan, to me, there was clear leadership gaps that I saw. And I would always ask, hey, can't you just put your arm around the quarterback every once in a while? And it was with every quarterback. I get it. I don't think Jimmy's the best quarterback in the world. In fact, I was going in on him for his performance again this week on Twitter. But I'm not leading Jimmy Garoppolo. If I was leading Jimmy Garoppolo, he would think he's the best quarterback in the world. He wouldn't think otherwise. He wouldn't know that I think otherwise. Same thing with Trey Lance. Same thing with Brock Purdy. And what I've seen from him with Brock Purdy is clearly Brock Purdy is somebody he trusts, but they've done a lot of things to show that leadership. They got rid of Trey Lance. Regardless of whether the team voted it or not, that's not really up to me, but he got a captain's patch. You saw after that first win, he put his arm physically around Purdy and showed him some love there. Then he gets criticized for CMC playing all the snaps in week 2. And he says, you know what? That's on me. Yes, traditionally it's a position coach. That is who should be making sure that players are subbed in and subbed out. But ultimately, I'm the leader of this organization. I've got to notice that and I've got to fix that. And it wasn't just lip service, because we saw the very next week, this last Thursday, that he did live up to exactly what he said. He's had chances to crap on Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy had some rough starts and made some throws that I'm sure he wasn't a fan of throughout these games. And every time he gets asked about him, it's like, you know what? That near interception, that was actually my fault. Or that fumble, that was actually my fault. I've never seen these things from Kyle. I love it. Now, I don't know if they continue when things get really tough and really tight. And if you lose a big playoff game, I'm not sure. But right now, I have to give credit where credit's due. And I agree. Shanahan is certainly showing strides in the leadership department. And I think it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, people evolve. Like Shanahan's a very young coach, right? And this was his first coaching experience, and there's going to be ups and downs. And, especially when this team started becoming better and better, obviously you get put under a microscope, and every one of your decisions are going to be that much more criticized and evaluated, and so on and so forth. And especially like Shanahan, within 3 years, took this team to where they're in a Super Bowl, right? So he's only coached with the team that has had Super Bowl aspirations for a majority of his coaching career. And with that is going to come a lot of scrutiny. So I understand why people scrutinize every little thing about Shanahan. I also think sometimes it's unfounded. But the one thing that I can say about this team, Jesse, is I think for the first time in the Shanahan regime, he has a quarterback that he truly trusts. And he has a running back that I don't think he's ever had in his career as perfect of a fit for his offense as CMC. And I think both of those things are leading to a lot of the way that he's kind of communicating, the way that he's seeing the game, and the way that his just confidence in his team, I think, is a lot higher. Where with Jimmy, even though Jimmy was winning a lot with this team, I think Shanahan had to do a lot more to make sure that Jimmy could be the quarterback to win with this team. I don't think he feels like he has to do as much with Brock Purdy, especially with CMC on the team. So that is all feelings over facts, but just the way that those two players specifically fit in this offense, I think makes anybody's coaching lifestyle a lot easier.
Certainly. Most certainly. These two comments go back to the trade of Surtain. It says, with this team, would you rather pay Ayuk or Surtain? There's ways to get your first back. So he's basically saying, hey, maybe if you trade for Surtain, you can trade Ayuk potentially, or trade Surtain later. You get him as a rental project.
I'd rather have Ayuk.
That, maybe.
I'd rather pay Ayuk.
On this team, kind of knowing where the future is going, knowing that Debo is an older receiver, knowing that Kittle's really kind of on his last couple of years here, probably lean Ayuk, but Surtain's very, very good. I don't think it's a open and shut for sure.
Open and shut.
I love Ayuk. So
here's the thing. I think that the 49ers have gotten burnt in the secondary because they were leaning on older cornerbacks, right? They've made that change. Every single draft, they're drafting 2 young cornerbacks to be in that. And whether it be Mosley, now Diamador Lenore, they develop these guys, and these guys are not necessarily quote unquote weaknesses on this team. Now, it would be great to have like Sauce Gardner or Patrick Surtain like lockdowns, but I think we're getting greedy at that point where we're like, we need these guys. I don't know. Like, I don't think that the secondary has been that massive of a hole for us in quite some time in the last few years, right? Ever since they were just pulling guys off of the couch, right? They made those changes. And I think you look at a guy like Surtain, that's great, but I don't know. To me, I just think that there's bigger holes on this team. And where they're saying, hey, you could get your first back. If we could, we would have. It's not that easy to get a first round draft pick back. You have to give up something really, really good. And I don't know, like, we're not at that point where we have all these stars that we want to give up. I think our team's at a different place now.
We don't need Surtain. But yes, I'm being very greedy. I want Surtain if he's available. Jordan says, let's get another run-stopping DT for Philly's O-line. Jalen doesn't look like the same without the OC leaving. Out of line for that. I'm not. Then who? So Philly, to me, always had the probability, not for sure, but to me, it was very likely that they were going to start off slow. You lost both your coordinators. Now, I do think Gannon was not a very good defensive coordinator, I think the world of Shane Steichen. So that certainly was a loss on the offensive side. Then you replaced a lot of defensive talent with good young defensive talent, but unproven talent. So it always seemed logical to me that the Eagles would start off slow. Jalen Hurts also starting off slow. I think the Eagles are going to eventually be fine. Also, looking at guys like Jalen Hurts and Lawrence, I'm not saying that they're not going to be good by the time this year ends, but they're just more examples of you got to see it for more than a year before you fully buy into who a guy is or who he isn't. Just be patient. Like we shouldn't make sweeping judgments on players one way or another based off of a season or 2 seasons. Like you got to see it for a while. So I think Jalen Hurts, once they start incorporating the run game or him running the ball more, will be better for it. But I do think it's going to be time, and I think it's going to be a work in progress. I fully expect that by the time the Eagles and the 49ers clash, that the Eagles are as good as they're going to be. Now, that still might not be enough to beat the 49ers, and I did pick the 49ers to win that game. But I think the Eagles right now are going – they're not a polished product. They're going to be much better as the season goes, for sure. And I'll say this too. Getting another defensive tackle is not going to make it happen. Vita Vea with that Tampa Bay defensive line was not enough. There's not many Vita Veas in this league. You need an all-time like Ravens, Tony Saragusa, and Haloti Nada type guys up the middle to even consider stopping that scrum, because they have an elite center. They have big guys at all these positions, and Jalen Hurts, who can squat over 600 pounds, is a powerful player himself. It is nearly impossible to stop it. I don't believe that there's anybody in this league, because the league has gone more towards a speed, athleticism, lighter overall type of league. I just don't think that group exists to stop this scrum play that they have. I just don't think it exists. And I don't think there's one player you can go get that is going to stop it from happening to you either.
What if a defensive end came available?
Okay, let's talk about one. Let's talk about
let's say Danielle Hunter. Yeah.
So would I take a Danielle Hunter?
Danielle Hunter or Patrick Surtain? Yeah.
I mean, on paper, I would say Surtain. He's younger, he's cheaper right now, but long run, yes, it is harder to pay him. You really, truly are kind of renting Danielle Hunter. That's more of a rental. That makes more sense potentially with the timeline to win now and also keep this team together long term.
Let's talk about instant impact first. Which player do you think gets you closer to a Super Bowl?
I think Patrick Surtain does.
Let's take Danielle out. Let's say Chase and Surtain. So same ages, same type of thing. Instant impact.
Chase looks better than he did last year. He's looking healthier. I still think Surtain. Surtain.
I would take the D end over a corner any day of the week.
Yeah, I think in a vacuum I would too. Like if I'm drafting and who do I have to choose? But we've already got Bosa. Like we already have the elite pass rusher and Hargrave next to him. So it's not like they don't have elite pass rushers already. They don't have an elite corner. They have good corners. They're not bad by any means, but they don't have a bona fide shutdown. Hey, mano a mano, you need to stop. It's 3rd down and 10 or 3rd down and goal in the Super Bowl, and you got Tyreek Hill there. He's one-on-one, or let's go somebody different. Let's say that you're playing the Bills. You got Diggs and Allen, and that you're going to get a one-on-one matchup with Diggs. Do they have that guy right now that can make that play and stop Diggs to win the Super Bowl? I don't believe they do. Does Surtain bring that to you? Yeah, I certainly think he does.
I guess I'm just trying. I'm having a hard time racking my brain around the game that the 49ers have lost in recent time, because they go up against amazing receivers all the time, right? There's a ton in this division, and then there's, throughout the NFC and all that kind of stuff. What's the wide receiver that has given us so much problems that this team hasn't been able to overcome them?
Well, I'll give you one from a couple years ago, and he didn't even have an elite quarterback thrown to him. Cooper Kupp, no. Well, yeah, I mean, technically, but I'm actually going to go to the same year and say A.J. Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown cooked the 49ers. He basically single-handedly beat the 49ers that week against the Titans. Well, him and Jimmy G single-handedly beat the 49ers that week versus the Titans, but he was incredible. He was absolutely incredible that week.
Yeah, but
it doesn't happen often. I see what you're saying. Reality is this is what kind of sucks about this whole thing, Sunil, is we haven't seen this team with Brock Purdy and CMC if that team's good enough to win a Super Bowl. We would have found out last year. Now, maybe they still lose to Philly, and we know that they need more. Maybe they still lose to the Chiefs, and we know that they need more. We don't know the answer to that question. And so the thought process is this team could be enough, and it could be. It may have been last year. I tend to think that it wasn't. I think it was close. I still don't know that they beat Philly, and I'm not confident at all that they beat Kansas City. But that possibility does exist, that they were good enough to win a Super Bowl as the team essentially is constructed now. We just don't know the answer. If we knew the answer was no, and Purdy had stayed healthy, and we're like, they just weren't good enough, then you could more confidently say, okay, let's go get a Patrick Surtain. Let's go make this thing happen. We just don't know. That's the hard part.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know. I tend to believe that they are good enough. And I think going out and giving up your first rounder makes it harder to continue to have success. Because Patrick Surtain
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so that's what I think the discussion is. And like I said, if we end up with Surtain, I'm not complaining. I'm not going to be like, man, I'm never buying a Surtain jersey. Sure. Obviously, it's going to be great. But if I'm the GM, I'm probably not making that move because I also am thinking, look, these guys have that 3-year plan, right? I'm also thinking, right now, if Trent Williams goes down, I don't have an answer. Right now, if Colton McKivitz goes down, I don't have an answer. So now I'm pushing that answer back another year, 2 years to really be able to solve that. I think that's a bigger issue.
Yeah, I think for me, the way that I see it is I think this team could be enough to win a Super Bowl. I mean, we talked about it early. It does seem like the season is shaping up very nicely to put themselves in a good position for that. And they may win the Super Bowl as constructed. But I don't know that for sure. I feel a hell of a lot better about those chances that I already think are good. Like, I think they're a Final Four team at worst. At worst, they lose in the NFC Championship. At best, they win a Super Bowl. But if this team has a peak, again, I don't know that peak, but let's say the peak is losing in the NFC Championship. I believe Patrick Surtain is enough to take that peak and stretch it to a Super Bowl victory. I really do believe that. When you have a talent that level and you put him at any position group on the field and he's going to play 50, 60 snaps a game, I think that's enough. So for me, I'm doing what I can to ensure that I win a Super Bowl. And if that means mortgaging a first-round pick next year to make that happen, then you know what? I'm making sure I win now. That's just me.
You'd be wrong, but okay.
And I do have the script for this season. 808 Niner says Patrick Surtain would allow the D line to get more sacks because if you have Ward and PS2 making QBs hold on to the ball for an extra half second, that would be huge. I agree. I mean, we saw that, and it's not easy to win against the 49ers this way, but we saw Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and them go crazy. They were playing off man. Now it's like, okay, well, we don't have to play off. We're just going to get in your face from jump. We're going to allow our defensive line to get home. Like they go hand in hand. I agree with this comment here. Okay. The final topic here, and I got to know where your head's at with this one because this was also a topic of yours. Is it time to crown Purdy? And I guess I got to know what the basis of the conversation is to give a full answer. So when you say crown, when I hear crown, I hear, okay, bona fide top 10 quarterback, time to push him over the top. We got to give it to him. But when you say crown, I don't necessarily know if that's what you mean. What do you mean when you say it's time? Is it time to crown Purdy? Not that you're saying it is time, but what is the actual question at hand here?
He's the man. He gets the contract extension this offseason. You keep him in as a 49er starting QB for the foreseeable future.
Well, first of all, they can't give him a contract extension this offseason. They have to wait till 3 years.
Okay, Mr. Facts. That's what
I'm just saying. But like, is he the franchise quarterback? Like, is it time to say he's the franchise? You're done looking. Like, is that okay? That's fair. That's a fair question.
Because now it's what 11 games in a row.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, the bigger the sample size gets, the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, I don't.
Let me put some more stakes on it.
Okay.
Let's say you had to make the decision going at some point this season. Otherwise, you don't have a shot at him next year.
Okay. It's such a tough question because, like, is he worth Danny Dimes money? Like, certainly, like for sure. If that's what we're talking, if Danny Dimes can get that money, but is he worth like he's the next man up to get that fat contract where he's resetting the market? No, hell no, absolutely not.
And let's not even talk about money. Let's just say the decision to make him like do you go all in on him? Let's say you have to make the decision to go all in on him or you don't get him next season.
Okay. So all in meaning I'm committing that he's the guy for, let's say, the next 5 years. So that's the option. And this is fair. I like this. This is a good way to preface it. So I'm choosing that he's the guy for the next 5 years and I can't replace him, or I'm letting him walk at the end of the season and taking whatever else I can get. Maybe that's a Kirk Cousins stopgap for a year. Maybe I'm drafting guys. Maybe. Ooh, that's a tough question, bro. Oh my gosh. Ooh. Dude. Okay. Wow. This one's got me thinking. Oh, man.
And guys in the chat, that's the question. So right now you have the choice. You commit to Brock Purdy for the next 5 years.
Right now, too. It's like
you don't get to now. You don't get to wait till the off season. You don't get to see if they win a Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. Based off of his play, since he's been the starter with the 49ers, you make the choice. Is he the guy for the next 5 years? Or you decide, hey, we're not going to make that choice. But next season, no matter what happens at the end of the season, he's walking.
Oh, my gosh, dude, that's so freaking tough. I guess the question to me, because I still don't know enough, right? If it came down to money, I would say, listen, I can't do it yet. But this is a whole different scenario we're talking about, and this is what makes this interesting. I guess the question that I have to ask myself is, how long do I think I have supreme talent? Because what I can say that I feel very confident in is that Brock Purdy with supreme talent around him is probably enough, right? Like that I think we're finding out. Like it's probably enough. So do I think over this 5-year span, I'm going to have supreme talent for at least 3 of those years? Because I got to put myself in the best position to be competitive long term. So if I think I'm going to have supreme talent for the next 3 years, then the answer is unequivocally yes. You roll with it and then hope that you continue to see improvement. If it's not, if the answer is no to that, then I think the answer has to be no. I'm just trying to talk through my thinking. My
that's
logic
fine.
here.
That's great.
I think the answer has to be no in that scenario, because I haven't seen enough right now to definitively say Brock Purdy can carry a team when the chips are down and the talent's not around him. That I don't know the answer to. I'm not saying he can't, but I'm not sure he can either. I haven't seen it. So do I think they're supremely talented for this year and 2 years beyond that? Because the other option is this. If I don't go with Purdy, I'm probably bringing Cousins in for a year to be a stopgap and then trying to figure it out after that.
If you get Cousins, because I'm sure
you get
that's
Cousins,
a lot
like
of teams.
That's what I'm going after, but there's no guarantee. Oh my gosh, bro, this is awful. Listen, quarterback play is just not good enough in the NFL to take a chance. I know that the team right now and at least next year is good. I'm going all in. I think Brock Purdy can be enough under that scenario. So if I have to make a decision right now to either cut him as soon as the season's over or make sure he's the quarterback for the next 5 years and I have zero other options, I'm going to ride with Brock Purdy. Because I just don't know what there's too many unknowns. And I know there are better quarterbacks in this league, but I know there are a lot worse quarterbacks in this league. And there's no guarantee that I find a better option. So I would have to commit under that scenario to Brock Purdy. That's a really freaking tough question.
Yeah.
Damn. Am I sweating? Am I showing that I'm sweating? That was tough, bro. Okay. What are you choosing? What are you going to choose to do?
So for me, it's an easy answer, and I'm going with the same answer you said. I'm going with Brock Purdy, and it's because ultimately, I think we just saw with the way Jimmy Garoppolo just played for the Raiders that Shanahan has a lot to do with how these quarterbacks look.
Yeah,
and Shanahan tends to coach, just has a fit, right? Shanahan has a certain type of quarterback that his offense runs better with. Jimmy G was that type of quarterback, but Brock Purdy is even better of that type of quarterback. So I think the combination of Shanahan and Purdy for the next 5 years is going to give Shanahan a quarterback that he knows he can trust and run his system the way that he wants it run. Now, I do agree with you. Like, I think a lot of times when people get hung up on this question, Jesse, is they're like, well, if Brock Purdy was on another team, is he going to be as good?
No, for sure. Absolutely.
That isn't that doesn't matter. Like, we're not like, we don't need to worry about him being on another team if he's that good. On this team, in this system, with this coaching staff, Brock Purdy is perfect for what we need. Now, I think your point about supreme talent is important, but I would also say the supreme talent is going to be CMC. If CMC is as long as CMC is the running back, I think that they could piece together everything else around him to be good enough, right? Because I think Ayuk will be there. Like, let's say they lose Debo. Do I think this offense will still be great with just CMC and Ayuk? I think that's a yes. Right? Because that's how much faith I have in Shanahan's system being able to make receivers look better than they are, to make quarterbacks look better than they are, and the ability of what a CMC does to make the quarterback position easy. So for me, it's an easy answer. I'm going with Purdy for the next 5 years because like you said, man, we've been struggling trying to find that guy for some time. And I think Purdy has been the closest to that guy that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, you can be in quarterback purgatory for a very, very long time. Like, you definitely can. And like I said, my question with Purdy has never been, can he do it with this roster around him? It's, can he be that guy to carry a team when 2 or 3 of these guys aren't here and the talent level isn't there? But over the next 5 years, I don't know how many of those years exist. It may take also 2 years before that exists. And
you have to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you have to also put into play that Shanahan and Lynch are still here, right?
Sure.
The talent on the offense
and Patrick Surtain's coming. I agree. Yeah,
and the talent on this offense outside of CMC is all homegrown. You know what I mean? They're drafting these guys. They're developing these guys. So to me, like you already mentioned it, Juwan Jennings probably isn't going to be here next season because he's going to be too expensive. Ronnie Bell's already there, right? They have Ayuk. that if for some reason they have to let go of Debo for whatever reason, Ayuk is going to be that weapon, and I'm sure they'll draft somebody in the second or third round that will become another weapon that they have. Like, they're just good at replacing talent, right? And so for me, I think they'll always have really good talent on this team because of the way they draft, because of the way they develop. And so that's what I'm saying. There's people here that are like, oh, he's a top 5, top 10 quarterback. Look, I don't know any of that stuff. I know in this system,
he's not a top 5 quarterback. It's comments like these, and I Spy v Spy, appreciate you, Celts. You know, you're my guy, but it's these comments is why I'm the hater in the community, because I said, like, when people go crazy one way, I'm like, hold the F on. Like, let's not go crazy with this thing right now. Top 5 quarterback? You're only taking Mahomes over him? What the are we talking about? No way. Come on, y'all. Please tell me you watch more football than just the 49ers. That can't be real. That cannot be real. Like, I'm sorry. And if that means that I'm a hater because I'm not willing to go crazy one way, then damn it, I'm a hater. But no, this stuff has to stop. It has to stop. No.
And I wouldn't take that stretch to that, because to me, top 5 means you put that quarterback on any team, he's playing the same way. I think Purdy is perfect for this system, for this coaching staff, for this roster. And sure. That's why
I agree with. Right? No. That and if the question is, I think he's better for this staff, sure, I can understand that. And listen, Spy v Spy, I don't know what all your takes are. If your one take is that you were right about Lance and right about Purdy and I was wrong, sure. But I've got years and years and years of content out there that talk about quarterbacks, not just 49er quarterbacks that have been hits and haven't been hits. So, like, let's be real. Let me see all your take. Let me see you calling Justin Herbert 3 games in his sophomore year a bona fide superstar at the next level. Let me see those receipts. Let me see your receipts of Brock Purdy in 2020. Let me see your receipts of Zach Wilson coming into the league and Justin Fields and, you know, all these other quarterbacks. Like, let me see those. You know what I mean? Like, sure. If the take is, hey, I always knew Brock Purdy was going to be a G, then by all means, more power to you. But let me see all those other receipts. Like, that's what I want to see. Kudos to you. If Brock Purdy's a top 5 quarterback and you've been saying it for 2 years and I haven't, by all means, you are right. But let me see all those receipts that aren't related to 49er quarterbacks. Like, let me see those. I'm just curious. If you can provide those, then I'll come on the show and say, Spy v Spy, you are the best quarterback evaluator I've ever seen. I can't even hold a candle to you, but I don't think those exist. Just saying.
Yeah. And I think in Kyle Shanahan's system, you don't need to necessarily be a top 10 quarterback to make this offense a top 10 offense, right? And that's where I think the fit is. I think this offense is just very elite with Brock Purdy at quarterback. Does that make Brock Purdy an elite quarterback? I don't care. I'm not into that narrative. All I care about is he the right quarterback, and does this offense look elite with him at the helm? And I say, yeah, that's why to me it's easy. Yeah, you keep Brock Purdy for the next 5 years.
Listen, bro, you don't care about fame, but you sure cared about making a bold statement. Like, you clearly wanted to call out, and then you make dumb comments like this. Like, come on, my guy. Like, be better. Be better than that. All right, let's get to the super chat. With the name, you guys with the names, I swear. We had Brock Purdy's balls come through. Now we've got beats and meats. He says, if we're in the Super Bowl, we will be facing an elite wide receiver. You need a dude who can run with him. Are we positive about that, though? And the only reason and this isn't making my Patrick Surtain argument any better, but if they play the Chiefs, like, I don't think that we are seeing an elite wide receiver. Now we're seeing an elite tight end, That's a whole different thing. If the Chiefs make it, we're not seeing an elite wide receiver. Now, and same thing with the Ravens, by the way. They've got some decent receivers, but we're not seeing it there. Now, if we see Miami, if we see Buffalo, if we see Cincinnati, who else in the AFC that we could possibly see? Is that kind of it? Likely? I mean,
I guess not the Jets
I don't
anymore.
buy into the Jags or Chargers. They've got good teams, but I just don't buy into them. So, I mean, yeah, there's a chance that we see an elite wide receiver. We're likely going to see one in the NFC Championship for sure.
I mean,
more than one.
This is what I don't understand. We see them in every game in our conference.
We do, but we don't see complete teams with an elite wide receiver. I think it's kind of his point. Like, yeah, you're going to see elite wide receivers, but you don't see complete teams that are Final Four teams week in and week out that have elite receivers also. Multiple.
Okay, but we're talking about an offense versus our defense, our cornerbacks versus elite wide receivers. We don't see that. We see that all the time. We don't see them beat that often, right? We've seen Dallas, a complete team with insane receivers, haven't been able to beat us. We've seen Seattle, insane receivers, haven't been able to beat us. Arizona is going to have good receivers, right? We've seen D-Hop and all those guys haven't been able to beat us. So I'm thinking, like, I'm wondering, what is the game that people are like, we need these elite cornerbacks? Like, in the past, we did. I agree. We didn't have good enough corners, but when we have Moody, it's slipping my mind, the guy that went to Detroit that was injured, got the knee injury, and then
Mosley
was developed. Now Lenore is developed, right? Like, we haven't had that issue where these corners can't hang with elite receivers. In fact, these guys are shutting down elite receivers on a consistent basis, right? The problem is we allow these receivers to get a lot of yards in our soft zone coverage, right? It's not that they're always beating us deep or these guys can't run with them. So that's where I'm trying to say, like, that hasn't been an issue for us in quite some time, where there's this receiver that we just can't stop, right? Even Green Bay, when they had when it was Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they would get their yards, but they weren't beating us. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think that's that big of an issue.
I think that there's not many elite receivers that are also attached to elite quarterbacks, right? Like Devontae Adams, for example, right now is attached to Jimmy Garoppolo. Seattle's receivers are good. I don't think DK's elite. You can say what you want. I don't think he's a top 7 receiver in this league.
Sure, but DK, Lockett, and whomever that
good receiving core, but also not attached to elite quarterback. They're attached to a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think Geno's pretty good. So I think when you get to a Super Bowl, you're also attached to an elite quarterback. Like, those guys come with Josh Allen. They come with Joe Burrow. They come with Lamar Jackson. Now, Tua, not so much. And quite frankly, the Ravens don't have an elite wide receiver. So really, you've got 2 teams that you have to worry about that are attached to an elite quarterback and an elite wide receiver. I get my whole overall point is that with Patrick Surtain, you're as good as you're going to be. Like, you can't, I don't know what move you're going to make this year that is going to make you better. And if this is it is a Super Bowl or bust year, in my opinion, not from the standpoint that heads are going to roll or people are going to get fired, but this might be your last best chance, right? Like, you've got to go all in. So if that opportunity arises, I'm still going for it. Sean says, anytime I ponder, I read this one. That's why I'm laughing. He says, anytime I ponder if Purdy is good or great, I watched Jimmy G on the Raiders and remember what average at best really looks like. God, Jimmy G, man. Damn. Spy v Spy. What was your thoughts on Jimmy G 2 years ago? Curiosity. It's Vito, baby, says Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Taylor Swift is there then. Oh, gosh. I see what you did there, and I don't like it. Deborah says Brock Purdy cleats in the Hall of Fame. Pretty cool. Yay. Are you talking about for the 2 touchdown games, the consecutive 2 touchdown games? Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. Or no, it was the I think it was the passer rating game, something like that. But yeah, no, that's really cool. There's Hall of Fame's just cool in general. There's so many little nuggets throughout history that are pulled in and put in the Hall of Fame. And that's pretty damn cool that his cleats are in there for that, for sure. All right, y'all. I'm going to be back tomorrow with Behind Enemy Lines and have an Arizona content creator on. That game just got more interesting because we did not expect them to beat Dallas. They actually might be a more formidable foe than what we initially thought. At the very least, no matter what we say about Gannon, he's got the team playing hard. So we'll give him that. So we're going to talk to an Arizona content creator tomorrow night. And I'll also be on 49ers After Dark with Grant. Until tomorrow, peace.